Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today's webinar about the Connecticut SAT School Day, some more detailed information to prepare you to administer the test starting in March. My name's Michelle Rosado. I work at the Connecticut State Department of Education, and I'm joined by my colleagues Deirdre and Abe. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. My name is Deirdre Ducharme. It's great to spend some time with you this morning, and I'm here to support your work in preparing your SSD coordinators and students for the provision of accommodations on the upcoming Connecticut SAT School Day. And now I'll pass the baton to Abe.
Thanks, Deirdre. Morning, Abe Christ from the Performance Office. Thanks, everyone, for attending workshop today. Thanks to you all, to my colleagues, Michelle and Deirdre, and then the College Board team who does a great job with these, Adrian and James. Thank you.
Adrian, you want to introduce you and James?
I will do that. 1 second. I'm sorry. I just stopped sharing. Let me share again. Alrighty. So hi, everybody. I'm Adrienne Kupper. I lead the Connecticut implementation for the Connecticut SAT School Day here for College Board. And I am joined by my colleague, James Wilson, who I'm going to ask to introduce himself.
Good morning. The most important thing to know about me is that Abe and I spoke this morning to coordinate our clothing. So he's the more formal interior version of me with the pink tie and sweater vest, and I just have a pink t-shirt under my pullover. But other than that, I do work with Adrian on SAT implementation across a number of states, and as a former New Englander, always love to work with Connecticut. So thank you.
Thank you, James. I also have another colleague who is on the phone or on the call, although she is traveling, so she's on mute. Michelle Cosner, she is our field liaison. Some of you have gotten to work closely with Michelle, so she is with us this morning. Keisha Smith, who provides SSD support, isn't with us this morning, but she gives lots of support to lots of Connecticut schools and works very closely with Deirdre to make sure that schools have what they need to support students with testing accommodations. So that's the gang. Michelle, do you want me to take it away, or is there anything else you want to say before we get started?
Just wanted to mention, because I've had a few emails about this, David does no longer work for the College Board, and so Michelle is now the liaison to reach out to, Michelle Costner. So if you don't have her email, certainly reach out to me and I'll connect you with her. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Alrighty, so we're going to get moving on today's content. We've got a lot to cover in this 55 minutes we have left together. So we're going to cover a number of different topics. One thing I do want to mention, though, is please use the chat to submit any questions you have. You can do that throughout the course of the presentation. James and Michelle and Abe and Deirdre and folks will be focused on the chat during the presentation. So feel free to pop your questions in as we go, but we will also take some time at the end for a Q&A as well. So we're going to get rolling. Let's first just kind of review and make sure we're all on the same page about the Connecticut testing window and kind of the timing of the test and scheduling. The Connecticut testing window runs from March 4th through April 19th. And so you, as schools and districts, have the ability to choose any day or days within the testing window that work for you. You no longer are kind of reliant upon the days that we are telling you have to test, but you have that kind of long period of time to look at your schedules and determine the day or days that work best for you. One thing to call out is that you're going to want to make sure that you're planning to test students kind of in an initial attempt, but that you've also thought about and planned for any day or days that you want to use for testing students who may have been absent or for students who have testing irregularities. So just some things to think about as you are putting together, as you're thinking through your schedule for the spring. The test is significantly shorter than it was in years past. So as you can see on the screen, standard testing time with breaks included is 2 hours and 24 minutes long. And so it is when you factor in breaks, it's about an hour shorter than it was last year, which I think is great for schools and great for kids. Just know that students do need to complete testing in one day unless they're approved for an accommodation that allows for testing over 2 days. I do see a question in the chat. Do you have to test all your kids in one day? You don't. You have the opportunity to use the testing window as you need to. So if your school, if it works better for your school to think about taking all of your 11th graders and breaking them up over 3 or 4 days to test, you can do that. That's totally fine. You know, you kind of use the testing window as you need to use the testing window. Some schools may choose to test all their kids in one day because that works for them. Other schools may choose to test, you know, a quarter of their 11th graders on one day and then a quarter on the next day and so forth, and whatever works for you. The testing window is designed to give you flexibility. The other thing that we just want to call out when you're thinking about planning your testing is that testing is no longer limited to mornings. So you can test students in the morning if you'd like, as you're kind of used to doing with us, but feel free to also use the afternoon as well. You can kind of break up testing across the day in a way that you haven't been able to do before. So and you can have multiple test sessions in one day if you'd like. You can test some kids in the morning and some kids in the afternoon. That's all up to you. You can do it as you'd like to do it and as works for your school. Just a couple call outs. Would want to make sure that when you are thinking about testing students, if you're going to use the afternoon, please make sure that you've started your test for your students with enough time for them to finish it before the end of your school day. So just make sure you're planning that timing out, because if your students start the test and then you get to the end of the school day, they haven't finished it and they have to leave, they're going to have to take a retest and they'll have to take the entire test over again. So please make sure you're being thoughtful about the timing and how it relates to your school day if you're going to use the afternoon. Also, just a reminder, and this has been the case for years, but please know that you cannot take a lunch break in the middle of the test, right? So if you're going to test in the morning, you need to test before lunch. If you're going to test in the afternoon, you test after lunch. You can't take a lunch break in the middle of the test. The only exception to that is for this year, students who are taking the double time test for reading. So it's a lengthy day for them. Those students will have an extended break in between the two sections. They were calling it a nutrition break, where students will be able to have kind of it's a 20-minute break for those students in between the two sections to allow for them to eat and have, kind of substantial snacks or lunch and have something to drink in that time frame. Okay, so kind of if we look at the timeline, we have onboarding activities going on now, and they're going to continue through January. This is the stuff that we will guide you through to help make sure that you are prepared for test day, and whatever test day you choose or test days you choose, that you're ready to give the test. We have a new tool called the Interactive Checklist that's going to launch next week. I'm going to talk more about it later in the presentation. Accommodations requests can go in now through January 12th. Test Day Toolkit access will start for test coordinators on February 5th. Online training will be available and will be something you'll complete in February. That will be available in February, but will remain open through the end of the testing window in April. So if you have folks that need a reminder, if you're testing later in the window, or if you have folks that need, that are going to be, you weren't originally planning for them to be staff, but they're going to fill in, you'll have access to that training all throughout the testing window. You'll need to complete digital readiness activities like a student digital readiness check in February. The state testing window, March 4th through April 19th, and scores for students and educators will be released in May. The score release dates are dependent upon when the test was administered. So if you're administering the test early in March, your scores will be available sooner than somebody administering the test later in April. Let's do a little test system overview again, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So the test, when we talk about the test administration system, there are two applications that are kind of used on test day, and then a third application that is used to help organize things. And so the first one is Bluebook. Bluebook is the testing application students use to take the test. It is a downloadable app that needs to be downloaded onto student testing devices. Then there's Test Day Toolkit. This is the testing administrator app that test coordinators and proctors will use. This is a web-based app. It does not need to be downloaded. Test coordinators can simply access it from their browser. And then there's the State Data Management System. This is a new system. So if you've tested with us in the fall, you recall our state SSOR system, which was where kind of registration and other details happen. State Data Management System is kind of a version of that for specifically state testing. It's the system that that CSDE will use to register students, and it's the system that you'll be able to use to kind of look and see some student data and be able to do things like if a student wants to waive their accommodations for this particular administration, if they have approved accommodations but just don't want to use them for the Connecticut SAT school day, that will be done in the state data management system. So with Bluebook, you see on the screen, this is what the screen will look like for a student when they're in the reading and writing section. You see the reading passage on the left and the question on the right. And then this is an example of what a question in the math section could look like. This is a student-produced response question. So on the left-hand side, there's directions for how to complete a student-produced response question. Then on the right-hand side is the question and where a student will actually enter their answers. We have a number of different different tools in Bluebook that are universal tools. A couple of them that I'm going to highlight here. There is a built-in Desmos graphing calculator with a math reference sheet available in Bluebook, and that is built in. All kids can use it and access it. And so if a student would like to bring their own external calculator, though, they're still allowed to do that. So if a student has a graphing calculator that they're used to using and that would make them more comfortable when testing, that's totally fine, as long as it's on the approved calculator list. There's also the flag and review feature. So what a student can do is they can, in the upper right corner of the screen when they're on a question, they will, there's a little flag, you can click on it and turn it red, and that will let the student know that they've flagged that for review. And then at the bottom of the screen in Bluebook, there's a little button that says, kind of, in this case, it says question 7 of 14. But when you click on that button, it pops open a little tray that shows all of the questions in that particular section. And then the ones that have been flagged for review will appear with that little red flag on it. And to get back and forth to those questions, a student can simply click on that and be able to navigate quickly to a question they wanted to review. Each student also has their own test timer on their screen, and so it appears at the top of their screen. Some students love seeing it. They love knowing exactly how much time they have at every moment. For other students, it may be a little bit anxiety producing for them to see that. And so students have the option to hide the test timer if they'd like. There's a hide button below the timer itself. You click on the hide button and the timer will be hidden. If you want to see where you are again, though, you click on the unhide button and the timer will pop back up. And then the timer pops back up when there are 5 minutes left in the section, so that every student knows that their test time is coming, that their time for that section is coming to a close. And then there are some annotation tools in Bluebook. A student can kind of use the highlighting feature or the annotation feature where they can write a message, kind of click on a section and put a message in there about it, so that if they're trying to make notes for themselves while they're reviewing it, so they can kind of figure out and determine their response, they can do that. If a student moves on in the module that they're in, so as long as they're in the module to that group of questions that they're taking at that time, if a student moves on in the module that they're in and then they come back to the question, the Bluebook will retain their annotations as long as they're in that module. There are a number of other universal features in Bluebook. You can explore them in the digital test preview. I will talk later in the presentation about how you access the digital test preview, but there are a number of other additional tools in Bluebook that students may find useful. So when we talk about Test Day Toolkit, that's the administrator app. There's two versions, if you will, or two views in Test Day Toolkit. There's the view for a test coordinator, and test coordinators will use Test Day Toolkit to organize staff and room and rosters in Test Day Toolkit. They'll print sign-in tickets from there. They'll monitor student testing on Test Day, so they get the global picture of testing happening in your building on that day. And they'll also use Test Day Toolkit to submit irregularity reports. So if you recall, last year you had to do paper irregularity reports. That goes away. This year they come in through Test Day Toolkit, and so you'll be able to get information very quickly after you submit an irregularity report. And then there's a proctor view. So the proctor view is really focused on making sure that proctors can see and keep track of what's going on in their testing room on test day. And so they are able to use the steps in Test Day Toolkit if they're a proctor to check their room readiness. So we'll walk you through a few steps to make sure you know exactly what to check to make sure your room's ready for test day. Also, you'll be able to admit and prepare students to test. So basically, the script that you need to read students so that they know what to do before you start testing on test day, that's included in Test Day Toolkit. You don't need a separate script for that. So it'll be on your device screen when you are admitting students into testing and preparing them to be able to then start testing. Then once students have started testing, you'll be able to monitor testing if you're a proctor in Test Day Toolkit. So you'll be able to see the status of students, you'll be able to see the section that they're in. Are they have they submitted their answers? Do they need attention? Are they having a problem? You'll be able to see all that in Test Day Toolkit if you are a proctor in that room. And then proctors also have the ability to submit irregularity reports in Test Day Toolkit. So if there's a problem in a testing room that they need to report, they will submit an irregularity in Test Day Toolkit. Then the proctor irregularities get sent on to the test coordinator at the school. The test coordinator can then review it and determine if that's something that needs to get sent on to College Board. There are a few new things to be aware of for Spring 2024 Test Day Toolkit, especially for those of you who have tested in the fall, in fall 23. Test Day Toolkit will become available for spring testing on February 5th, 2024. We will give access to Test Day Toolkit based on the information that you've provided to us through the onboarding survey. So what we will be doing this year, though, is for the spring, is we have heard the feedback loud and clear that you guys would find it helpful if you had more than one person at your school with test coordinator access to Test Day Toolkit. So not just the test coordinator, but that you may have other people at your school that may be helpful, that it may be helpful for them to also have that test coordinator access to Test Day Toolkit. And so so we will be supporting that for you this year. Basically, the way that we're going to do that, the test coordinator and then also the person that you have listed as backup test coordinator will both be provisioned with test coordinator access in Test Day Toolkit. So this way, you're not the only person that has, you as the test coordinator are not the only person that has access to those test coordinator functions. Seth, you are welcome. It's like I could hear you in my brain when we were talking about needing to do this. All of you, we know, we heard the problem for the fall, and we really wanted to make sure it was better for you for the spring. So we're going to make sure that, like I said, the person you have indicated obviously is the test coordinator, but also the person you've indicated is the backup test coordinator will get that test coordinator access. Please make sure that you have that the person you have listed as backup test coordinator for your school is accurate. And if you need to update that, Michelle Rosado handles those updates with us. And so if you have indicated somebody to be the backup test coordinator, maybe that's shifted at your school, and now you know that somebody else different is going to be your backup test coordinator, or you'd like to make somebody different your backup test coordinator, knowing now that we're going to give them access to Test Day Toolkit, just work with Michelle. Michelle then updates that information with us. We will be pulling the data for this very specific activity of providing that additional access on January 19th. So by mid-January, please make sure that you've updated your backup test coordinator to be the person you want to have Test Day Toolkit access as well as the test coordinator. You are also more than welcome to actually, if there's additional staff that you need to have access beyond the test coordinator and the backup test coordinator in Test Day Toolkit, you can call customer service to request that. You being the test coordinator can call customer service to request that. It's actually very helpful, though, to make sure before you do that, that person has a College Board educator account, and that kind of the login info, like the username for that, because that'll make it easier for customer service to help you. So starting on February 19th, after we've gotten this kind of first round of additional people entered in to Test Day Toolkit, those backup coordinators, if you still want to add additional people beyond that, you're welcome to do it. Just call customer service for that. And we will also be working to make sure that district level staff who would like access to Test Day Toolkit as a test coordinator for the schools in their district will get access to that. So district level staff will be working with Michelle, and Michelle will be communicating out to you the process we use for that. A few additional changes for spring of 2024. We've had the kind of requirement that for years we've had this, where students need to be separated by 3 feet. So you have a student, and then there's 3 feet from the center of their computer to the center of the next computer of the next student. And that's really to provide the opportunity for proctors to move in and out carefully and all that kind of stuff, and to make sure students have enough room for testing. We've clarified the language a little bit so that in terms of tables, you can use any size table that that allows for 3 feet between students. So we had been very explicit before that if you were testing students at a table that was 6 feet, you could only have 1 student at that table. We've made some changes now, and this is specifically knowing that a number of schools actually have tables that are 5 feet in length. And you can have a student at one end and another student at the other end and still have 3 feet in between students at a 5-foot table. We are hoping that this makes it easier for you to use the furniture that you've got and plan the rooms in the way that they're already set up in your school. So just want to call that out, that that we've made that change where you can seat more than 1 student you can see 2 students at a 5-foot table, as long as you make sure that they're at either end and that there's 3 feet between. Additionally, we've made a change to the scratch paper policy. So for fall, we had said each student had to receive 3 pieces of scratch paper, and then each student had to put their name on the top of it, and then schools collected it. We heard the feedback that students were not actually using 3 sheets of scratch paper, but instead that most students were actually using 1 sheet of scratch paper, and that because students had to receive 3 sheets of paper and put their names on it, you were wasting a lot of paper in schools. We don't want that to happen. We don't want you to waste your resources. And so for the spring, you'll see that we have made a change so that each student receives, the policy is now, each student must receive 1 piece of scratch paper. They have to put their name at the top of that scratch paper. The proctor needs to have additional paper available in the room, in the testing room, to provide to students if they request more. And then if a student does request more, they do need to put their name on the top of that if they've gotten more paper. But you're only required to provide 1 sheet of paper to students at the beginning of testing. Then once the testing is over, the proctor will collect the scratch paper and the school keeps the scratch paper for 30 days. But we hope that this makes it kind of that you guys are not wasting paper in this way. And then we heard also loud and clear that while we had put out a number of different shorter topic-related guides in the fall, we were hoping to make it easier for you to find what you needed, but we heard the feedback that it wasn't easier. In fact, it was harder to find what you needed. So for the spring, you will receive a consolidated test coordinator manual. Seth, we are making your day today. I'm excited about that. But you'll receive a consolidated test coordinator manual. It will have all of the information in it that you will need. It will be So if you think about more like the manuals you had last year, where you were just able to go into one manual and get everything that you needed, except we're making improvements to even that. We're going to make sure that the language is clearer and a little bit easier to comprehend. So we're excited for that. You'll then get a proctor guide you can give to them that they'll have to be able to use for test day. You'll get a hall and room monitor guide so that they have what they need for test day. And the only thing that's really going to be separate for you, there'll be two things that'll be separate from there. The first one will be the irregularity guide. That'll be separate from the coordinator manual, but that will be something you can use on you'll only really be using when you are kind of following up at the end of testing. And then we'll have a separate kind of troubleshooting guide, because that is kind of used by a whole bunch of different roles. So we'll have the separate troubleshooting guide. But all of the stuff you need to prepare for testing up to and through starting testing will be in a consolidated manual. All right, let's talk about technology requirements just briefly. So obviously you need to have your schools need to be able to meet some device requirements to make sure that your students can test and your staff can administer the test. So College Board supports school-owned and managed or student-owned laptops and tablets. For Chromebooks, and obviously desktops, but because they'll be on site in schools. But for Chromebooks specifically, they must be school managed. We want to call that out. You can't have students test on student-owned Chromebooks. That is because Bluebook is a kiosk app, and what happens is that the kiosk app has to be pushed out through the Google admin console, and so that can only happen with school managed Chromebooks. So just want to make that call out so that you're clear. You'll probably hear me say it like 100 times before the end of the day, but that's an important call out. You need to make sure that the device is either plugged in or can hold power hold charge for 3 hours for testing. As you saw, Testing with breaks is 2 hours and 24 minutes. You want to make sure that the device can hold charge for at least 3 hours. You also want to make sure that if you have a student testing with extended time accommodations, that their device, we actually recommend that those devices are plugged in because the time is longer, or you are very clear on how long they are testing and that their device can hold charge for that period of time. And then all the devices must be able to connect to the internet. For student devices, it is required that they connect to the internet at the beginning of the test so they can download their test package, and at the end of the test so they can upload their responses. We prefer if those devices can maintain connection throughout the course of the test, because it helps us with troubleshooting and helps us kind of gather information about your student's testing. But if a student should lose access to the internet, if it drops in a room or an individual student device drops for a little bit, that's okay. It's not going to affect the student's testing. They just need to be able to reconnect to be able to submit their answers to us. Network requirements, again, like I said, all schools, you need to make sure that students and testing staff do have access, can connect to the school network, because all roles, whether you're students or test administrators, need to be able to have access to the internet to start to complete testing if you're a student, and to start testing and then monitor testing if you're an administrator. All right, so let's shift gears to talk about planning for staff for testing. We talked through this a little bit before. The roles, the roles are fairly similar in some regards, even though, and if you think about a lot of what you had to do for digital testing with us previously with the CII platforms, it's not all that different for a test coordinator and SSD coordinator. They're still making sure that your school is prepared for testing, that the devices are prepared for testing, that you've thought through staffing and rooms and you've planned room rosters, all that kind of stuff. Test coordinators will need to print and distribute the sign-in tickets. And like I said, differently from last year, test coordinators will be able to submit irregularity reports in Test Day Toolkit, so no more paper irregularity reports. The SSD coordinator, for the SSD coordinator, the big change for SSD coordinators is there's no more having to manually set accommodations like you did in Tide. What happens is from the SSD Online, the information, the approved accommodations in SSD Online flows through and informs the test package that the student gets in Blue Book. So, assuming that you've submitted your accommodations as you should have and that they are approved, that student's test package will be configured to support their approved accommodations. So SSD coordinators do not have to go through the process of manually setting accommodations in the testing system for students. What SSD coordinators will want to do, though, is use Test Day Toolkit to look and just confirm that the accommodations the student has are correct. Okay, you want to make sure that they're correct. If they're appearing incorrectly, we'll need to make adjustments, so you'll need to contact us. But that is an important confirmation step so the student can test with the right accommodation. But you no longer have to actually go through and set configurations. For testing staff roles, the technology coordinator, again, is the person making sure that the devices in school and school network are ready to administer the test. They will work. You'll need to make sure that the test coordinator and the technology coordinator and the SSD coordinator work closely together. The technology coordinator is also going to need to work with the SSD coordinator to make sure that if a student is using any sort of assistive technology, that student's device is configured to support that assistive technology. Then there's the technology monitor. This is a new role. So basically what we are suggesting is that you have a help room on test day, and that this help room is a place where you can send students so that if you have a student that has a tech problem, right, let's say maybe their device isn't connected to the internet. You don't have to hold up testing for that student in that whole room. You can send the student off to the help room. The technology monitor in that room can help do basic troubleshooting with that student. If the troubleshooting doesn't work, they in that room can call tech support and be able to get support for that student. So that's a role you'll need to consider. That role can be your school's technology coordinator, but in some schools that technology coordinator may not be school-based. Maybe it's a district person. So instead, you're going to want somebody school-based in the tech monitor role. So it can, you can be flexible in what works there, but you're just going to want somebody who can support basic troubleshooting for students and help and call tech support if needed. And the proctors and the room and hall monitors, again, their roles are very similar to what you've experienced before. The big difference is that proctors also have the ability to submit irregularities in Test Day Toolkit if they'd like. When we're talking about staff member selection, we're a little bit more relaxed about this than we were previously. So before, if a test coordinator had a student taking the test on the same day, even if it was in a different school, we weren't so keen on them being test coordinator. Now, the test coordinator, the only limitations on test coordinators, if they have students that are that if they have their own children that are taking, or other kids that are in their care that are taking the SAT, is that they can't be a test coordinator if those students are taking the SAT in their own school. So that's true for test coordinators and for technology monitors. That's only if you have children at your own school that are taking the test. Additionally, we've relaxed it a little bit for proctors. So proctors cannot administer the test to their own child. But other than that, proctors can administer the test. So if you have a proctor whose student attends your school and is taking the SAT, they can't proctor their own student, but they can proctor a room of students that aren't their children. So hopefully that'll make things a little bit easier for you for staffing. Also, please remember that testing staff are not permitted to engage in any paid private SAT-related assessment preparation. This excludes kind of the teaching of course content and test familiarization that happens as part of a school day. This is outside paid private SAT-related test prep. And then staff members can't have taken a College Board test within 180 days of the school day administration. We've got a number of training offerings coming up to support you guys, to prepare you for administering the Connecticut SAT school day. The first three on the list are all things that Michelle has sent out information about and registration links about. If you missed that, check your email. Michelle's sent out a PDF document with all of that stuff in it and the links. The last one on the list here are the on-demand test day training modules. These will cover the nitty-gritty details you need to know and that your staff need to know to be able to do what you need to do on test day. They will be available starting February 5th. And then they'll be available February 5th through the end of testing, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Task coordinators need to complete it by February 23rd, proctors by March 1st. These can be accessed from your College Board Educator account dashboard or the link that's on the screen. So like I said, they'll be available starting February 5th. Okay, let's talk about the interactive checklist. This is something I'm super excited about. This is a new tool that's designed to help schools organize the tasks they need to complete for spring 2024 testing. So each school gets a unique and specific checklist to your school. And it's a way for you to keep track. You as a test coordinator, what do you have to do? What have you completed? What's coming up? Same thing for your SSD coordinator and for your technology coordinator. So you'll receive tasks. Not only will you see that on your kind of checklist, but you'll receive task notification emails for upcoming tasks that you need to complete. In the task notification, you'll be able to mark tasks as complete, or you can let College Board know if you're stuck and need help. You'll receive a task reminder email the day before the task is due if you haven't completed it, and also the day after the task is due if you haven't completed it after it's done, after the due date has passed. And the interactive checklist will launch to test coordinators, SSD coordinators, and technology coordinators starting on Tuesday, December 12th. So what does it look like? The first thing you'll get is an experience overview email. So this is going to kind of explain information about the interactive checklist, how it works, and then you'll be able to click on a button that'll appear at the bottom of the screen where you can click in and view your project if you'd like. And then there's a project plan view. So you'll be able to kind of see, okay, what's coming my way over the course of the next couple months. Each school member receives an individual link for your project plan view. So you as test coordinator will see your test coordinator activities on your plan. An SSD coordinator will see the SSD coordinator activities for the plan. If you're both test coordinator and SSD coordinator at your school, you'll see both sets of activities on your plan. So when you look at your plan, it's like I said, it's going to cover several months leading up to testing. We may add tasks as kind of time goes on as we work through things. And if we do that, your plan view will update. But let's say you're looking at your plan view and you see an activity you're not sure about, you want to know more about. So let's say this one that's kind of at the bottom in the second column. If you click on it, you'll be able to see more information about it. So you'll get a sense of all of the stuff that's coming your way. And then you'll get a task notification email as well. So so when a task launches, when you're able to start completing it, you're going to receive an email notification that lets you know you've got a task, and here's all of what you need to know to complete that task. And then at the bottom, you're going to see that there are buttons that you can click to let us know, hey, did you do the task already? Mark it as done. Are you working on it? Mark it as in progress. So mark as done, you click on the green button. Mark as in progress, you click on the blue button. And mark as stuck. If you are having a hard time, you need help to complete this task. If you click mark as stuck, you will be able to what that'll do is that'll set a ticket to customer support, and somebody will reach out to support you on the task. And like I said, if you haven't provided an update for the task, shortly, like the day before the task is due, you're going to receive a reminder to remind you that the task is coming up due. The task due date reminder emails look like this. So it'll provide the due date for the name of the activity, the due date for the activity, a description of the activity, and then through the task reminder the task reminder email, you can click on the buttons in there as well to let us know the status of what you're working on. There will be some tasks that we'll be able to set the ability for you to provide some feedback to us. So there are going to be some tasks we're going to want to know how it went for you, and maybe we can use it to make the process better. And so for some of those tasks, not every task, but for some tasks, you'll complete the task, and then you'll get a pop-up that looks like this, and you'll be able to let us know quickly by clicking on the little faces how satisfied you are with how that task went. And if you want to provide more information, it's not required, but you're welcome to provide more information. Like I said, we're going to take this and use this to make our various processes better throughout the next year. Another thing for you to consider as you are planning for testing is the spaces that you're going to use. So test room requirements, not all that different than before. You need to make sure that all the rooms that you're going to be using have sufficient internet access to support all students that will test in that room. You want to make sure that seats are facing in the same direction. Now, the exception to this is if you're testing in a computer lab. We know that most computer labs have their furniture kind of already configured and they can't be moved, and that's fine. In that case, you just want to make sure that students don't have a direct line of sight to other students' screens. So in general, you just want to make sure that students can't easily see each other's screens, that students are separated by at least 3 feet from center of computer to the next computer to allow for proctors to circulate. And also, as I mentioned, the change where if you are using 5-foot tables at your school, you can seat 2 students at a 5-foot table. You can have 1 student at one end, another student at the other end, and have 3 feet between them. Additionally, you want to make sure that students that their testing surface, whether it's a desk or a table, has adequate space for their testing device, scratch paper, and an external calculator if they choose to use one. Also, that there are power outlets available in the room and that the seating is arranged to make it possible to use those power outlets. There needs to be a visible clock in the room. Chairs should have backs, and also that there can't be visible maps, charts, or other teaching material. So either there shouldn't be anything on the walls, or if there is that kind of stuff on the walls, that it needs to be covered up for testing. Some key activities to be aware of. The first one is really, it's a system, not necessarily a key activity, but this leads you to so many other key activities. The State Data Management System. The State Data Management System is the new College Board system that we will use to manage data for spring testing. CSDE will use this to register students for spring testing based on the information that's in PSIS for each district. All students who are listed as grade 11 in PSIS during the testing window will be registered to test. Just to call out that if students qualify for the alternate assessment, that those students will take the alternate assessment instead of the SAT. Now, within SDMS, school and district staff will be able to view the student registrations and also and so to be able to see kind of who's registered, the information about the student that's registered. School district staff can't add or change the student information in SDMS, but you can work with your district PSIS coordinator if there are discrepancies, and then when that is updated in PSIS, CSDE will be able to update it for us, and then you'll see the update flow through to SDMS. Districts and schools will be able to do some things in SDMS, such as waiving accommodations for students who wish to do so. So we'll have a recorded webinar available for you guys to look at in January. That'll just cover PSIS from the Connecticut SAT School Day, or I'm sorry, cover SDMS from the Connecticut SAT School Day perspective. And this way you'll know what you can do and how to do it. You will need to make sure in terms of staffing that you are adding staff into Test Day Toolkit. All staff that will be involved in testing need to be entered into Test Day Toolkit. If your school tested in the fall, any staff that you added in the fall are already in your staff library for this year, so you won't need to re-add them. Now, we do know, though, and we've heard feedback from schools that it can be a bit challenging to have to add a number of staff to Test Day Toolkit. Just time consuming. It's not hard, but it's time consuming. And this could be especially true for larger schools. So any school that would like support in adding staff to Test Day Toolkit, College Board will do the data entry work for you. So we're gonna what's gonna happen is, via the interactive checklist in the beginning of January, we're going to send out a task reminder to you to let you know that if you want to take us up on that offer, if you'd like to have us do the staff data entry into Test Day Toolkit for you, we will do it. We will do that, and we'll provide you with a template that you need to complete and return to us, and a deadline for doing that. So more information will come to you at the very beginning of January about that. Similarly, you need to add in each testing room into Test Day Toolkit individually, and so you'll need to make sure that that you are prepared. You've thought through the rooms that you're going to use, and that you've prepared to that you've provided that information in Test Day Toolkit so that you can assign students to those rooms. Again, we did hear that this could be a little time consuming, especially for large schools. So if you do want support in doing that, College Board will do the data entry work on this for you as well. Just like with the staff, we will have an activity that'll go out through the interactive checklist that will allow you to get a template of the information we'll need, and then you can provide that back to us. There'll be information will come out to you in January on that topic. Another important task, requesting accommodations and supports for students. SSD coordinators need to request testing accommodations for students with disabilities and the time and 1/2 plus 50% support for multilingual learners in SSD Online. You want to make sure that anybody at your school that is a returning SSD coordinator still has access to SSD Online, and that anybody who's a new SSD coordinator at your school has requested access to SSD Online. You'll see the request link on this. The link for the request is on the screen and available in the PowerPoint. Test coordinators should have attended. We had a webinar about accommodations. I believe the recording is available. We also are having SSD office hours. They're available to support SSD coordinators with with any questions that they may have about submitting accommodations requests. So we have 2 of them coming up. One this Thursday, December 7th at 11:30, and one next Thursday, December 14th at 11:30. And again, it's going to be we'll just cover a few basic reminders, but then the rest of the time will be dedicated to answering people's questions. A few resources for educators and for students related to the new digital SAT. The first is the Educator Question Bank. We've kind of revamped the Educator Question Bank so that there are about 3,500 questions that educators can search in the question bank for, using the different sections and the domains of the questions. And then educators can find questions that might work for them and use them in whatever way in their classrooms that they would like to. There's also teacher resource guides. The first is the teacher implementation guide. There's also a classroom practice guide for ELA and a classroom practice guide for math. These are all the links are in the deck, and these are provided to help support teachers as they think about preparing their students for testing. There's also some student practice and preparation materials. We have, through College Board, through the Blue Book application itself, students are able to access a test preview, a digital test preview, as well as full-length practice tests. We also still have a relationship with Khan Academy, where they are providing official SAT preparation through Khan Academy. These include videos, articles, examples that have been worked out, all sorts of things to help students prepare to take the SAT school day. And so these resources, or there's more information about these resources at the website that's on the screen. As I mentioned, for the test preview and the full-length practice tests, they are available actually in the Blue Book application. So a student can download the Blue Book application, and when you get their testing credentials in the spring, they use those credentials to log in, and they can do the test preview, or they can use the full-length practice test. If a student wants to access a full-length practice test now, those are also available now. They just need to have a College Board account to be able to access those. And as I mentioned, you can access these in Blue Book. When you log into Blue Book, you'll see when a student logs into Blue Book, they'll see a screen that looks like this. The full-length practice test is you click on the box that's kind of outlined in green on the screen, and you'll be able to access the full-length practice test. Now, a call out here too is that the digital test preview is available to students, but it's also available to you guys as educators. So if you download Blue Book and then you log into Blue Book using your College Board educator account credentials, you can access the digital test preview. So if you'd like to get a better understanding of what Blue Book looks like so you can support your students, you can do so by accessing the digital test preview. The other thing you can do is try out the different universal tools in the digital test preview. So we definitely recommend that educators take a look at this too. We also have new services this year to help provide students with access to their scores and access to college and career planning information. And so the first service is called Big Future School. It's a mobile application that students can choose to access. If they want to receive access to the Big Future School mobile app, they give us their cell phone number, and then we will provide them with access to the app, and they'll be able to access their SAT School Day scores in Big Future School. They'll get a notification when their scores are there. So if they don't want to create a College Board account but still want to get their scores directly, they'll be able to do so using the Big Future School app if they want. The other thing that they will get is customized career guidance and college planning information through the app. So how does a student kind of get that? During the test experience. So basically, either during the digital readiness check or right before testing on test day, if you haven't done a digital readiness check. So during the exam setup process, a student can take the SAT that's taking the SAT School Day, can opt in, can provide their cell phone number to us if they want to get access to the Big Future School app to be able to get their score on their phone, as well as to get college and career planning information. They will provide their mobile number to us, and then we will send them just a few texts. The first text is a link to be able to download the Big Future School app. It's not available in the App Store. In the App Store, they have to click on the link to be able to download it, and then they'll get another notification when their scores are available. They receive limited text from us. We don't share their cell phone information with anybody, and we don't use it for promotional purposes. And like I said, in the app, once they're in the app, they'll be able to see some customized guidance for college planning and for potential career paths. We have an additional service that students can choose to participate in as well. So if they've chosen to participate in Big Future School, they can also choose if they'd like to participate in Connections. So if you think about Student Search Service before, this is kind of a kind of updated kind of data privacy forward and data privacy friendly version of that idea, where students can get information about colleges that might be a good fit for them, but we at College Board are the ones that are sending them this information in the app. The colleges never get the student data information unless the student says, hey, I do want to learn more about this college. And then they'll click on the information they see in Connections, and then they can decide if they want to provide their name and contact information to that school. So it gives the student control over the information they want to receive from colleges. Now there are a few bookmarks you're going to want, a few important few important items we suggest you bookmark. And you'll be able to do so. These links are in the presentation deck. We suggest you bookmark the login, how you log into your College Board Educator account, information on Blue Book, how you download, troubleshooting, how you get updates, information about the updates, and then how accommodations are used in Blue Book. We also recommend that you bookmark Test Day Toolkit, and then we really recommend you bookmark your interactive checklist link. Each educator actually in the test coordinator, SSD coordinator, and test tech coordinator roles will receive a unique link to your project. So when you get your launch email, we suggest that you click on it and bookmark that as well. With that, we have come to the Q&A portion. I know that my colleagues have been doing a lot of monitoring of and answering questions in the Q&A in the chat. So we'll see if there are still some ones that are outstanding.
Yeah, there were a few towards the end that didn't get answered about
Okay.
linking to Khan and something else.
Okay, so the linking to Khan, the kind of linking that you're kind of thinking about from before, that isn't available at this point. But a student can still go in and be able to within the Khan Academy be able to kind of get the information they need and get different information about what'll work for them. So a question about the interactive checklist and the coordinator and backup coordinator. So the backup coordinator isn't going to receive a link to the interactive checklist. It's just going to be the test coordinator. So what the backup coordinator will get access to is Test Day Toolkit, so they can support you to be able to be able to do any of the administrative work in Test Day Toolkit before testing. Let's see here. Will districts have interactive checklists at all? So districts will be able to have access. Districts will get an access to a dashboard that'll show you the interactive checklist progress for each of the schools in your district. Those dashboards will launch for you right after the holiday break. So you'll get that in early January. But this way, Tara, for example, you'll be able to see how each of your schools is progressing in their checklist activities in the dashboard, and then drill down to each school to see exactly what's going on there. Okay, a question here. Do you have to roster in Test Day Toolkit? So you don't have to roster in Test Day Toolkit. We make a suggestion that you assign students to rooms in Test Day Toolkit, mostly because it may help you organize for test day, and it will organize your test tickets into rooms. So when you print them, they're printing out in the rooms that students have been assigned to. But if that doesn't work for you, you don't have to do that, and students can come in and be assigned to rooms as they enter into rooms on test day. So if it didn't work for you to assign students to rooms in the fall, you don't have to do that in the spring. Students can still test without being assigned to rooms in advance. What'll happen is they'll go into the rooms, on test day, and when they get the test coordinator or the proctor in the room will then be able to kind of assign them to the room once they're there. So we'll cover how to do it both ways in training, so that you are clear on making sure just you're set to do that. But if it didn't work for you to pre-roster them before in Test Day Toolkit, feel free. You don't have to do that. We'd still recommend you roster them outside of Test Day Toolkit. So if you're keeping like an Excel file of a roster or something, you're going to want to know where kids are going. But if it didn't work for you to do that work in Test Day Toolkit, you don't have to do it. I see a question about the slides. The presentation will be available on the CSDE assessment webpage. The slides are already there, and I believe Michelle's going to post the recording there.
Can I just talk a little bit about the PSIS poll?
Yes.
Because someone did ask, like, are you using, is it SOAR? Does that sound right? What'd you use to
Right.
register kids? We're not using that, right?
In the fall,
Yeah.
they use SSOR. You're not going to use that for spring.
All right, so we're using the state data management system. You basically have to just work with your PSIS coordinator to make sure that you have all your eligible grade 11 students in PSIS during the testing window. So in past years, we've done certain data pulls at certain dates. But this year we're going to be uploading every night during the window. And we do have the ability to actually remove students that are no longer listed as grade 11 in PSIS. We had a meeting earlier this year with College Board, and we have the ability to remove students and also to add any new students that end up moving for credit wise or however it happens, are new students that move in, or if you have students that leave your school, we'll be able to take those students out. So I don't actually recall the first day that it'll be populated because I don't know that. Do you remember that, Adrian, the first day the file goes in?
I am not. It'll be early in February, I think, in that first week when you get access to Test Day Toolkit, but we can confirm the date.
Okay, and I'm sure that I'll be sending you more emails also about around that. And then if you have students that qualify for the alternative assessment, as long as you complete the required paperwork that you're supposed to do, I'm sure Deirdre will come on and tell me the name of that. I should know it. If you do that, then those students will also be removed from the Connecticut SAT file, so they won't show up.
Yeah, that's great, Michelle. I was just going to say that we did set an early deadline of December 29th for our 11th graders that qualify for the Connecticut Alternate Assessment System through CT SED. So the state will be populating the alt flag indicator for those students in TIDE, and Michael Sabatos, our colleague, will be removing those students from the file that gets sent to College Board. But the good news is that if kids are identified by their PPT after the December 29th deadline, we'll be able to remove those kids from the Connecticut SAT school day file. So it eases the burden for your administrators and having to figure out which kids should and should not test. So in other words, if students are rostered for the Connecticut SAT school day and there's a change after December 29th, we'll be able to track those kids for you.
There are a couple more questions. We have 2 minutes left, but I think I can get through these 3 questions that I see. The first one, can 2 people be test coordinators, or must one person be a backup coordinator? So for the 2 people that have access in Test Day Toolkit, they can both do the test coordinator activities in Test Day Toolkit. When we talk about a backup, really, we have on our side, we have one person that kind of is the primary person that we'll be communicating with, and you know, but when you have both the test coordinator and the backup coordinator with access in Test Day Toolkit, they can both do those activities. A question, Dana, your question, in the past, we did a pre-admin session. Is that no longer part of the new SAT? It's a little bit different. It's not quite a pre-admin session. We call it the Student Digital Readiness Check. This is a chance for students to be able to do exam setup. They'll also be able to, try out the digital test preview in that. So it's the digital readiness check. It kind of replaces the pre-admin session. We do recommend still doing that before test day because it gives a chance to make sure that students are familiar and that you can make sure that your rooms can support, all those kids on the internet and all that kind of stuff. Does the College Board offer any webinars for scoring and how scoring has changed with the new digital SAT? Yes. So in the spring, Michelle Cosner will be doing workshops and webinars in Connecticut about kind of scoring and using data. So those will be available for you in the spring. When we have more information, we'll share that, but do know that they'll be coming up. Okay. We're at the end, I think.
Yes, just follow up with us if there were any unanswered questions from the chat. And I'm not sure, Kimberly, if you're looking for a particular link that didn't work right, just send me an email. I'm not sure what didn't work. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Adrian, for that. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Take care.